Hello friends, goes literally weeks straight without putting on pants here, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the single most painful lesson that I have ever learned in Dota 2. About a month ago, I was 8200 MMR. This was my absolute peak, and as is normal in this dopamine addiction that we all call Dota 2, of course, I was completely euphoric. But then, what usually happens ended up happening, and I plunged 1400 MMR in a little bit less than a month. So how in Lord Gaben's name did this happen to me? This happened because for one godforsaken reason or another, I decided it was time to learn the carry role. I'll spare you the nitty-gritty details, but let me tell you, my carry spamming days were some very, very dark times. But these dark times actually led to me learning an extremely valuable lesson. One of the most important lessons that I've ever learned from this game. And that lesson is, I'm actually a good carry player, but only in a perfectly average game. I realized that if a game was ever hard, I had no clue what to do to recover. And the problem is, builds, replay analysis, YouTube guides, or basically any educational Dota content that you can consume only tells you what to do in a normal game. Nobody tells you what to do if you're a Sven carry and your mid-ember feeds 0 and 5 by 10 minutes into the game. Nobody tells you what to do if you feed twice and don't have a TP to get back to the lane. Nobody talks about this sort of thing. But here's the problem. Useless, stupid shit happens in every other Dota game. So you need to know how to adapt to these scenarios if you actually care about winning and being good. Where this became crystal clear to me was when I was in a game where I was actually playing my main role, which is offlane. I had a game where my lane went extremely bad, as in I had less net worth than the enemy support's bad. I was Slardar and I was feeding, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna play like a support, pick up a Bracer, Tranquil Boots, and I rushed a Blink Dagger. Then I ran around with my mid laner, and I caught up by murdering people using his strength instead of mine. Would I do this build and playstyle in a game that was going well? No, absolutely not. On Slardar, or any other Blink Initiator hero, I would normally go for some treads, maybe a couple of bracers, drums, possibly Vlads, essentially some sort of early game item, and then eventually I would go for a Blink. Why would I do this? Because I would use my tankiness to create a shitload of pressure in the enemy safe lane, and probably get way more net worth for my team by being some tanky annoying guy that's pressuring their towers. This particular game and the build is not really that important. It's more so that this game, especially after losing so much MMR on the carry role, made it dawn on me. If you are actually good at a role or a hero in Dota 2, then you know these three things. Number one, you know how to play from ahead. Number two, you know how to play in a completely normal game. And number three, you know how to play from behind. For me personally, for most of the heroes in the carry position, I could fairly easily figure out what to do when ahead and in a normal game. That came pretty naturally to me. But I couldn't figure out what the hell to do when I was behind. And that fact caused me to be bad at carry and to tank MMR, because all three of these types of games are extremely common, and you only need to have a 49% win rate, and you are eventually going to lose a bunch of MMR. With that being said, let's quickly take a look at how pro players play a simple hero like Lion when ahead, behind, and in an even game. First up, we have a replay where PP Dagger was playing his Lion position 5 in an NA Dota pub where he was very behind. His game was extremely rough personally. His team was not doing so hot. I realize that I'm showing you this clip of when they have a 23k gold lead. Obviously, they didn't start with the 23k gold lead. If we look at the graph, the game was even and, possibly snowballing back to even and maybe even towards the enemies at certain points because, like I said, this is NA Dota, so people throw and feed. And at the very least, PPD was the bottom net worth for the entirety of this game. And so, does he pick up a Blink Dagger? No. Does he pick up an Aghanim Scepter? No. He doesn't pick up any of these aggressive items because he basically accepts that his only contribution is going to be walking into fights, pressing his spells, and then probably dying. His team's going to need to do all the picking off. His team's going to need to do everything because his game is so rough that he's basically a ward bot that just needs to survive for as long as possible and press all of his spells. and so he gets a Glimmer Cape first. This is also a much easier build-up than something like a Blink Dagger, Ether Lens. It's very cheap. The components are super effective, and so it's way better to get defensively, and it's way better to get when you are behind. And you can see that he literally just walks in and fingers the PL. He doesn't wait to chaos with Finger because his game is so rough that thinking about getting Finger of Death kills is just a stupid priority. So even with regards to playstyle, that's something that would be different if your game is going rough on Lion compared to if you're ahead. You would actually focus on trying to build up that damage because you snowballing is going to actually mean something. But in this game, he has to play around his team, not himself. So this clip that we have in front of us is a game that, as you can see, is relatively even in terms of the gold lead. It's 14-8, and I do want to show you a small clip, and then we'll speed up just to kind of demonstrate the type of game that this is. By the way, this is Super Playing Lion, and the game was looking relatively difficult to win. It wasn't a horrible behind game where you have no hope, but you can see they try to go for a pickoff on this snowballing morphling, and it doesn't work, even with the Blink Dagger. So he gets a Blink Dagger, he doesn't farm, he plays exclusively for pickoffs as opposed to playing to fight, because if they 5v5, they are going to lose that fight. And so you could see that the Blink Dagger results in them getting some kills and turning the game around. And once again, this is precisely why you build the Blink Dagger and precisely why you play in this way in a perfectly normal Lion game. You are not just able in an even game to run 5v5 at the enemy team, especially on their timings where they are strong. So your pickoff potential becomes incredibly important, because that is exactly how you want to start fights, or that is exactly how you want to avoid fights, because you just want to run around killing people in side lanes while the enemy team runs around as 5 trying to fight you on their timings. Here we have a clip from a game where FY was playing Lion, and he is having an incredible game. You can see that his team's net worth is not significantly higher than the enemy team's, but his net worth is higher than his offlane Chaos Knights. So this game, he is completely popping off. He is ahead, and so he is building and playing as if he is ahead. He builds an Ether Lens, and he just sits and camps in side lanes, basically looking to fight, looking to use his strength, and looking to rack up those Finger of Death kills and get that extra damage so that way he can continue popping off, which is something you wouldn't really concern yourself too much with if the game was going rough. Even if the game was even, you probably wouldn't be concerning yourself too much with racking up that Finger of Death damage. It would be more like, all right, how do we win this game? How do we stay in this game? And you could see that a difference in this clip and the clip where we have an even game, FY is actually jungling a little bit, and he's literally just sitting behind his Invoker with this Ether Lens, constantly looking to hunt. And I would imagine that if his team was more ahead, they're doing fine now, especially because of the pickoff that they just got, but if his team was more ahead, this Ether Lens would also be used to basically just engage in team fights and cast his spells from a longer range because he feels like he's strong enough to just run into fights and press spells as opposed to exclusively getting pickoffs. So, to sum it all up, if you are losing games and want to climb to a higher MMR bracket, number 1, restrict your hero pool, because realistically, it is damn near impossible to know 3 separate playstyles for more than a few heroes. And number 2, make sure that you know how to play and build that hero in all 3 of these scenarios. Look at Dota 2 Pro Tracker and try to find games where pros are having absolutely an abysmal time with your favorite hero and see exactly what it is that they do to recover. Or maybe you're not like me and you're actually really good at playing from behind but not from ahead. Look to see what people are doing when they're popping off and having a great game, and then start doing that in games that are going really well for you. Fundamentally, the too long didn't watch version of this video is if you are playing as if you are ahead, but you're behind, you're probably griefing your team. And if you're playing as if you're behind, but you are ahead, then you're probably griefing your team, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's it for this video, but before we go, I do have some really bad news. Unfortunately, today I have to be the bearer of bad news for you guys. I mentioned in a previous week's video that there was a dumpster fire at the Papa John's pizza crust area with the dumpsters there, And I also mentioned in another video that there was some sort of ferret attacks that were being carried out by these hobo militia people. They did keep the ferrets in the dumpsters, and so when I said that the fire had no fatalities, I was not thinking that the ferrets would be inside there. And so there were no human fatalities, but now there are lots of different animal control fines, and Canadian wilderness people are doing an investigation, and all of these different things. And so this will be very expensive for me to fight all of this, especially with the hobos still carrying out attacks. And so if you could like, comment, and subscribe, all of these things, especially commenting, that definitely does help for the YouTube algorithm. And I'm going to need to use 100% of my $100 a month or so that comes from YouTube to pay for these fines, or at least pay for a lawyer that is a legitimate lawyer. But in any case, thank you so much for the support through these deeply, deeply trying times for me. I appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you in another video.